All right. What is up, everybody? We are live. We are live. Good to see everyone here. A lot of you guys in the queue. All right. 26 minutes. Not the worst. I've started later. Okay. Excuse me. What's going on? Happy Mother's Day. I'll start the show off with a positive note. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. Happy Mother's Day to my mother. Happy Mother's Day to all of your mothers that are watching. Maybe any moms that will actually watch the show. I don't know. Do we have moms in the chat? W moms in the chat. So spent the day, headed home. Well, I was only home for like really a couple hours, hung out with my parents. Was a good day, came back here. Really a gloomy day here, but gorgeous, gorgeous Mother's Day. Gotta love it. Love my mom and all the advice she gives me. I guess since it's Mother's Day, I'll start the show by ripping on her. You know, every time I see my mom, it's like, we get through the basic greetings. It's like, hey, missed you, love you, you look skinnier, you look fatter, I like your hair, I don't like your hair. Typical mom stuff. And then she goes, do you really have to curse so much? Please stop cursing. Please stop cursing. And I'm like, Mama, I'm trying not to curse. But it's so hard not to curse when you're talking about, Netanyahu bombing Earth, when you're talking about southern Lebanon being annexed for no good reason. It's hard not to let a F-bomb out every here and there, every other sentence. But no, seriously, happy Mother's Day. It's going to be a good show. We're going to get into all of this stuff with Iran, as we've been doing for the last 70 days. It's been 70 days now since the conflict has started. February 28th was the first day the United States and Israel launched joint strikes over in Iran, specifically in Tehran, starting out. And in doing so, not only did they bomb a school and kill about 170 schoolgirls, all young kids, I don't think any of them really older than the age of 10 or 11, they also killed the supreme leader. And so he has now been succeeded by his son, and he is the head of the regime or the delegation that has been trying to administer these peace talks and reach a 30-day ceasefire. The United States and Iran, for the last week or 2 weeks now at this point almost, have been going back and forth with different stances, plans, stipulations to hopefully reach a 30-day ceasefire. And then after that ceasefire, they'd have some sort of buffer to effectively come up with some sort of like long-term peace deal. At least that was what it seems like on paper. However, Iran just recently proposed a new 4 or 5 point proposal. There were a couple asks in there. Donald Trump reviewed it, and he put on Truth Social that they were absolutely unacceptable. No surprise there, because Iran is asking for a release of reparations or a release of sanctions. They're asking for reparations. They are asking that there's a guarantee they will never be attacked again. And in previous proposals, they were even asking for things as maximalist as no U.S. presence in the region or within the peripheral, which means maybe no more bases in the Middle East and these Gulf nations, which is detrimental to our power and our structure in the Middle East. And so obviously that cannot be conceded upon. No way we'll actually agree to that. However, this is why we're not able to reach any sort of peace plan. And both sides have their fair grievances, right? It's a fair ask that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. But at the same time, we started this war on a false pretext because they weren't actually going to have a nuclear weapon, right? They were only enriching at 60%. They weren't going to go over that. They actually had a religious ruling, a fatwa, that religious zealots follow in the country, where they were not able to make a nuclear weapon since 2003 or 2004, if my memory serves me correctly, because it causes too much destruction. And so it was deemed forbidden or haram by the supreme leader. Nevertheless, we started the war and attacked them for that reason anyways, and now it's been 70 days of stalemate. We're now in limbo, and we've effectively lost the war in every single regard except militarily. However, you may even be able to make that argument considering the amount of damage done to our bases across the region in the GCC. So that's kind of the situation now. I'm going to read these articles that I have pulled up by the New York Times that I paid for. I paid for the New York Times because, God forbid, a nigga just wants to read the news. You got to pay. You got to pay. So I think somebody joined the membership earlier, so let me make sure that I shout them out. That's going to be Leandro Barajas. Thank you so much, my friend. I saw you. Don't worry. God bless. And then Mr. Ferdinand, $2 says, but their Navy's at the bottom of the ocean. Yeah, he posted a meme. We'll start off on a lighthearted note today because it's been frustrating. So let's see if I can find this picture of Donald Trump This meme he posted up on Truth Social. He's such a boomer, bro. Technically, he's not a boomer, right? Anyways, he put this on Truth. I'm not gonna lie, this is funny, but it's like, okay, Iran's Navy currently. This AI slot picture of shipwreckage at the bottom of the ocean. Like, all right, bro. Meanwhile, they're running us out of the Strait of Hormuz, which is why we bombed their coastline this week. If you weren't paying attention to the last stream, we were in the Strait of Hormuz. There were actually a series of events that kind of led to him, posting this, but Iran reintroducing a proposal. We've been going back and forth with Iran in the Strait of Hormuz now ever since Sunday. It all started with the UAE's oil facility, or their oil storage facility in Fujairah, getting bombed by an Iranian drone, and then it continuously got bombed throughout the week, but the subsequent strikes were not claimed by Iran. They said that they didn't do it. They probably did it. And there was no real immediate response from the United States. They actually weren't even willing to admit that it was a break of the ceasefire. They said that it was a love tap or something like that. And they said the ceasefire is still ongoing, while Iranian officials were saying, no, the ceasefire is over. And so that was likely in response to Donald Trump's Operation Freedom, which was the plan to guide these ships that are stuck in the Strait of Hormuz, these oil vessels, about 1,500 of them, or 2,000, different reports I'm seeing, but I think it's around 1,500 or a little bit north of that, out of the Strait of Hormuz so they can get the oil to where it needs to go. However, that's a short-term fix because, they got to go back and then go forth and then go back to get the oil from these Gulf countries. About 80% of the Gulf's oil actually passes through the Strait of Hormuz, the rest likely through the pipelines on the other side. And that's 20% of the world's oil, or 1/5, that goes to the Strait of Hormuz, which is the 19-mile passageway between Iran and Oman. And it's a vital choke point, which is why gas has been a little bit more expensive than it typically is. It's because of the price shock that we're feeling. Now, we're not going to fall short on oil. We get our oil from other countries like Canada, but the fact still stands, the global oil market is suffering as a result of this war. And so Donald Trump, in his desperation, tries to send these ships, or these Navy destroyers, into the Strait. CENTCOM had announced it on Sunday last week, I believe it was, and they said that we're going to guide the ships through the Strait. It's going to be this great plan. And then it failed within like 2 days. And obviously this is a threat to Iran. And by the way, blockading Iran, which is what Donald Trump has done, the naval blockade on Iranian ports, that's technically an act of war because you're trying to choke them economically. And in response to that, of course, maybe you can argue that's why they did what they did in the UAE, hitting the oil facility, but they started attacking these Navy destroyers, obviously, right? And I don't know if everything has been disclosed in its entirety, or we're really getting the full picture because of the fog of war, as well as the fact that the United States and Donald Trump specifically may not actually want to admit if we sustained or suffered any damage as a result of this operation. But they had their speedboats in the Strait going towards destroyers. We shot back at some of these speedboats. Allegedly, we sunk a bunch of them. That's what Donald Trump had bragged about on X. Sorry, Truth Social. I went over it last week in my stream, or just a few days ago, actually. And we were just going back and forth. And so after that, the destroyers were chased out of the Strait of Hormuz, but then they bombed the coastline of Iran. And if I remember correctly, it was Bandar Abbas, it was Mineb, and it was Keshem Island. All of them hit by U.S. strikes in response to all of the dilly-dallying that Iran was allegedly doing in the Strait of Hormuz. But really, it's just us trying to open up or relieve some of that pressure because Trump is suffering as a result of this. If you remember the Action Committee hearing with Pete Hegseth, who is the Secretary of War currently, he was faced with some tough questions. And a lot of the people that were asking him questions and the congressmen were saying, look, it seems like Iran, according to intel reports, has made $14 billion off of these ships in the Strait of Hormuz through these shipping lanes since the start of the war, or really since the start of their blockade. So you've done nothing except make them stronger. And then Donald Trump is also receiving several questions, Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, about gas prices increasing. And all they have to say is, well, it's worth Iran not having a nuclear weapon. And it's like, hey, that's a good argument if they were going to have a nuclear weapon. And if you are not privy to that, I've debunked that several times on my channel. And maybe I'll actually upload a weapon. That's not what I meant, YouTube. Upload a video as to what that means in regards to them hedging and everything. Me and Sneeko spoke about it. Shout out to Sneeko. But a lot of people never really grasped that idea. But we'll get into everything. I'm like running at 1,000,000 miles an hour. But yeah, happy Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day, guys. I'm going to I think I had a couple super chats come in, so I'll read them. And then I'm going to need you guys to follow. So I've been plugging my clips page on Meta at the end of my streams, and that's kind of dumb. I should do it at the beginning. So I'm gonna plug in my clips page here. Go ahead and follow me on Instagram if you have not already. And I don't want to do this too many times throughout the stream and derail from the news, but this is the clips page. I gotta log in. Just ask me later. I don't know. Riyadh Pilled on Instagram. My editor is uploading 2 clips there a day, give or take, depending on how much there is to upload. And you'll find my personal Instagram on there. But just follow the clips page. That really helps me out. People see me on Meta. That's a good, big help in discovery, which will hopefully lead to more people on the streams here on YouTube. So I really appreciate all the help. We'll talk about the situation in Iran. We're going to react to the Netanyahu interview. I have to say, unfortunately, 60 Minutes is like sick with copyright. Like last week, I think it was, we were watching the 60-minute interview with Donald Trump after the White House correspondent shooting and the correspondent dinner shooting, obviously, with Cole Allen, I believe his name was. I forgot about the situation at this point, but the crazy deranged guy that allegedly tried to get into the hotel and kill high-ranking members of the administration. Trump did an interview the day after, actually, with 60 Minutes. We reacted to that, and YouTube absolutely smacked the video off of the face of existence. And so I had to go back and like take it out and re-upload the video or re-upload the live stream. And then everybody was like, where's the interview? And it's like, yeah, 60 Minutes is like, and that's the problem with YouTube sometimes, is you got to be really careful with what you're showing on screen. Like if I react to CBS or like CNN, Fox, I'm usually good. I'm always good. But with 60 Minutes, bro, they knocked that shit down real quick. So got to be very careful. We'll try to watch it in doses. I always give my commentary anyways. I always interject for better or worse, I guess. But I suppose we'll watch all these clips that I see here on X. A couple clips that I think are really funny, but the main takeaway is, and we'll see the context. We'll see like a little bit more of what he was saying. To the point, he said the United States does not have to worry about giving Israel aid anymore. Like we're going to pull away from relying on the United States financially, economically, and we want to do it now so that the next Congress, the next administration doesn't even have to do any work. We want to start now with Trump. That's what he told the 60 Minutes interviewer. So, again, we'll get into it, but really weird when you read that front-facingly. I mean, on its face, it sounds like he's got maybe another ally that he's depending on. I don't know. We can speculate all night about it, but we'll give a more detailed analysis actually once we watch the clip. So no worries. All right, let's read some chats and then get into all the good stuff here. So Leandro Barajas, thank you so much. Mr. Ferdinand, I read that already. Legend CED says, happy Mother's Day to the single fathers out there. Just kidding. I just wanted to see what being a feminist mother feels like. Hey, thanks for the super chat. Yeah, happy Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day. I'll be honest, in my culture, like in Muslim, I guess, Arab culture, I don't know what you would even call me. Everybody calls me something different. We're not like crazy about Mother's Day because it's like, bro, every day should be Mother's Day, you know? Not to sound super corny and cliche, but your mom is your mom. You know, your mom is a very important person in your life. So you should show your appreciation every day to your mother, not just on one day. Anyways, the Scribed Voices says, need a law to where no one over 60 can be president. Yeah, they were talking about that, but that's just never going to work because the biggest vague prerequisite of becoming president is having age, is having experience, you know, being politically involved for a long time. And that brings something up. I meant to speak about this last stream and I completely forgot. I really don't think J.D. Vance even has a chance. Maybe I'm wrong and I'll look dumb in a few years. That's fine. I mean, he could win. I think Marco Rubio is the more seasoned candidate. I think Marco Rubio is the more well-spoken candidate. I think that publicly he's liked much more. So, and interestingly enough, there were a couple statements that came out in some articles a few months ago that were saying that everybody's banking in the administration on Rubio and the donor class is leaning towards Marco Rubio instead of J.D. Vance. Now, obviously, J.D. Vance has ties with these big tech companies and little tech companies like Palantir and others. And I don't know if he has ties with like Flock and stuff, but, you know, it just seems like J.D. Vance doesn't have the charisma that Marco Rubio does, and I don't like neither of the guys, so it doesn't serve me to benefit or really favor Marco Rubio over JD Vance, but it just seems like JD Vance is a little bit behind the mark. And look, he's got no experience. I think he was in the Senate for 2 years. He's got no skin in the game. You look at a guy like Marco Rubio, he's been doing this for a long time, and he ran for president once already. So, and if you want proof as to what I'm talking about, we reacted to it the other day, and I was ripping him to shreds, but if you watch his White House press secretary thing, he was like dialed in. He was very charismatic. He was answering the questions well, albeit there was tons of propaganda layered within all of his answers and the line of rhetoric that he was spewing, but he was well spoken and he wasn't stuttering. He wasn't nervous. He knew how to answer every single question. You know, when JD Vance is thrown a difficult question, for him, it's like he's dilly-dallying in his head thinking of an answer as he's just rambling about nonsense for like 3 minutes. Theo Von asks him about Palantir, and he says, Peter Thiel, I don't think Peter Thiel's a part of Palantir. Peter Thiel co-founded Palantir. So, and obviously he has ties with these guys. He can't say these things, but to me, JD Vance just doesn't seem like he can deal with the heat as well as Marco Rubio can, albeit neither of them really seem like they're capable candidates. I'm not saying Marco is better. Again, I have to reiterate that because people are dumb and they're going to misconstrue what I'm saying. But I would bet that Marco Rubio has a better chance of success in 2028. Early prediction, but it's really not that early. I mean, we've got 2 years. We've got 2 years before the elections start, and until these guys start campaigning is maybe just a year at this point. So who knows when it'll really start, but I think maybe about a year. So I think Rubio has a better chance. I think Rubio has a much better chance. And then you've got Nick going against JD Vance. Doesn't help his case. We'll see. But that's my prediction there. But the whole, like, you know, over 60, that's just going to be the case for a while. You know, Obama was an anomaly. Let's see. Just SK says, with 2 kids, it's a scary world to try and raise them. Like, the amount of people who eat all this propaganda is crazy. With 2 kids, it's scary. Oh, yeah, to raise these kids in this world filled with propaganda. Thank you so much for the super chat. Yeah, I mean, look, not to be contrarian, not to play devil's advocate, but that's exactly what I'm about to do, as I say not to do it. You know, obviously, Israel has lost the media war. I think that's fair to say. I mean, look, you've got the boomer base, you've got the 40 and 49-year-olds and the 50-year-olds and the Gen Xers and the millennials. And so they've had this same line of rhetoric spun around their head for decades upon decades, which is the Middle East is this unstable region due to Islam and the war on terror and whatever have you. But I think that that's been dismantled, you know. And when it really started, obviously October 7th did a lot of it, but when it really started where people became, for lack of a better term, I guess, red-pilled on Israel, was the effects of October 7th after and the transparency that came from people within the Biden administration, the Trump administration, things that Joe Kent, like similar actions to that. And the letter to America by Osama bin Laden being declassified, that was huge. Like, people really started to wake up. And so, you know, we're going to get into all of this, but I think any Israeli or Israeli official understands Israel is losing the media war. It's evident at this point. It's not even this covert, like, weird niche online internet theory that it maybe once was in 2018 or 2019. Now it's at the point after 2023 and onwards, if you like Israel, you might actually be the anomaly. And at the minimum, people are just indifferent about Israel. But it used to be the case that everybody spat out the same lie, which is that Israel is our greatest ally and we need them in the Middle East because they're the only democracy and they keep it stable and they bound back the terrorists. But the more digging you do and the more you've just been paying attention to the news, especially after COVID and then 2023, it's like everybody's kind of on the right side of things right now. And anybody who's not is likely just being paid, you know? And so, you know, they know what it is, but they can't say that because they've got financial interests with Israel or with Hasbara campaigns, obviously. And that's a lot of politics, obviously. Like, that's a big piece of politics, is people being paid to say certain things. But, you know, for all intents and purposes, Israel has lost the media war. And I think Netanyahu is realizing that. Maybe he's hearing something through the grapevine where in 2 or 3 years, he's just not going to have the same U.S.-based support that he has now. And he knows that. He's recognizing it. He has intelligence go-aheads. He knows. So there's definitely been a slow but sure revolution in the United States. People's thought processes, their framework has completely changed. Look, we just reacted to Megyn Kelly 2 or 3 days ago saying, you know, I used to rip on Muslims, and now she's completely 180'd and said Muslims aren't the bad guys. And it's not about whether you like Muslims or hate Muslims. It's really like all of this is now coming to surface for the greater purpose that, oh, we all share a common enemy, that being Israel. So it's remarkable. It's remarkable. I think that, let's say, look, I'm 24. If I were to have kids like 31, I don't even know if I would have to, quote unquote, like red pill them, right? Like, I think just reading the news and having half a brain would give you a lot of the clearer picture than it would have previously. Now, look, I mean, there's still a lot of dummies out there. There's still a lot of Hasbara and propaganda. Look, it's still strong, and it's stronger than the stuff that I'm saying right now. But there's been a shift. And I know there's been a shift because the things I'm telling you guys now would never fly like 5 years ago. You know, other day I was talking about the situation in the West Bank. I was talking about what happens in southern Lebanon, going into detail about villagers being tortured and stuff, and these Palestinian people. And like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, that wouldn't have flied. Now it's completely okay to talk about. So there's a shift, you know, and that's the proof to it. Did a lot. Why are mods timing me out for having a different opinion? I don't know. You must have said something stupid. Thanks for the super chat, though. Okay. So, yeah, did a lot. Don't you always say silly things, bro? I don't know. I feel like my mods have good judgment, so I'm sure you said some dumb shit. Someone said Jubio. Yeah, I don't like Marco Rubio, but I'm just telling you what it is. I think Stephen A. Smith even came out and said, I really like Rubio more than Vance. Like, it's happening. I see it. You know what I mean? Like, I think Rubio is going to be a legitimate competitor. I'm not saying Vance won't be there. I'm just saying Rubio is far more polished. He is far more polished. Look at the way those two answer questions. Look at the way those two talk about their plans, how they can explain a situation. Marco Rubio is significantly better. He's a better orator. He's more composed. He's got more skin in the game, and he still has the donors behind him as well. So there's a chance he can come out on top. I know it's too early to say, but there's that reality. So I always want to make sure I highlight that. Anyways, let's read this article. Don't worry, we'll react to the Netanyahu interview. That's the good stuff. And maybe we can start out with that, I guess, because it's a little bit more juicy. The situation in Iran has been redundant. But should we just stick to schedule here? Let's see. I'll read the article. We'll be quick. So this here, is out of the New York Times. And this reads, Trump rejects latest Iran offer for talks, extending limbo in the Middle Eastern war. So this was earlier today around 8:48. And it reads, President Trump on Sunday rejected the latest offer from Iran to end the war with the United States, declaring that it was totally unacceptable. And this is where we can find that. If we go to his Truth Social here, he said it earlier today, about 5 hours ago. This is at 4:12. He says, I have just read the response from Iran's so-called representatives. I don't like it. Totally unacceptable. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And don't worry, we're not getting distracted from the article here, but I want to show you what Iran was asking for. This is from Riram Navaram on Twitter, but I was seeing this across news as well. And this is from Tasneem News. This here says Iran's response and the things that they were asking for is immediate end to the war on all fronts with strong guarantees against future attacks on Iran, lifting all of the U.S. sanctions on Iran, including Iran's oil exports market, ending the U.S. naval blockade, release of all frozen assets belonging to Iran, Iran's right to manage the Strait of Hormuz. And again, we looked at the Trump post here, and he says it's totally unacceptable. It continues on to go. Mr. Trump commented hours after the Iranian government said it had sent counterproposal to end the conflict following a tense week of attacks and responses in the Persian Gulf that rattled a fragile ceasefire between the countries. The detail of Iran's proposal were not made public, and Mr. Trump did not say what was objectionable. I have read the response from Iran's so-called representatives, he wrote in a post on his social media platform. I don't like it. Mr. Trump's rejection extended the latest standoff in the effort to end the war and cast doubt on whether the stalemate would be broken anytime soon. The president, however, has shown little appetite for resuming hostilities. I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, he just did Operation Freedom to provoke them. But anyways, particularly before he meets this week in Beijing with President Xi Jinping of China, whose country maintains close ties with Iran. The United States and Israel began coordinated strikes on Iran on February 28th, and Iran responded with attacks on Israel and neighboring Arab countries allied with the United States. Iran also closed off the Strait of Hormuz, the gateway to a fifth of the world's oil supply. Mr. Trump declared an indefinite ceasefire last month and told Congress that hostilities between the two countries had been terminated. Though they have continued their tense face-off in the Strait, some Gulf countries have also reported drone attacks from Iran in recent days. And this morning, I believe, Kuwait had to administer air defense because they had some drones in their airspace. Keeps going to read, Mr. Trump has maintained that the United States has met its military objectives in joining the bombardment with Israel in February, but his ultimate goal of the war, preventing Iran from ever obtaining a nuclear weapon, remains unfulfilled. And not even the fact that it remains unfulfilled, he flat out failed. And Netanyahu had said in the beginning, I remember I showed this clip, I'm not going to be able to find it now, but take my word for it. He said in order for us to reach our goals in Iran in regards to the enriched uranium, the highly enriched 60% uranium, we are going to have some sort of ground element. That's what he said verbatim. And I don't know if it was the case that they weren't parallel in their ways of going about actually reaching that goal, that being Trump and Netanyahu, but obviously Netanyahu sold Trump on the idea of going to war. And we know that because after the strikes on the 28th, tons of news came out and surfaced from maybe White House officials, but all of these mainstream press outlets like the Wall Street Journal and New York Times, that Trump's intelligence told him Iran doesn't have a nuke and they're not about to make one anytime soon, not as we're watching them now. And Tulsi Gabbard said this last year, and everybody knows this. The intelligence community always said this, but of course he still started the war on that false pretext. And so what Trump was thinking, I don't know. What the plan was, I don't know. That's why everybody who was talking about the war when it first started was very confident there would be a boots on ground invasion, not because that's how war works and everything like that. No, because of the fact that we know what the goals are of Israel and the president. It's to seize this uranium, which is a very lengthy, long-winded, difficult process to actually achieve your goals in. So that didn't happen. Now, an F-15 fighter jet was shot out of the air earlier last month, actually, while we're in May. Time is flying. And a lot of people speculated that that was a failed operation for ground forces to seize uranium or something like that. My brother did a good video on it, and you can go check that out. Just type in F-15 fighter jet Myron Gaines. It should come up on YouTube so you can get the details on that situation. But ultimately, we have not really launched any sort of ground presence to get that uranium. And that's because there's about 250,000 armed guards belonging to the IRGC on the ground ready for us and waiting. And this is what the foreign minister said in an interview. I forget, I think it was with 60 Minutes or somebody else, I don't remember, but the foreign minister had an interview at the beginning of this war, Abbas Araghchi, and they asked him, you know, what if the United States invades on the ground? And he said, well, we're waiting for them, and we're very ready for that. And that's real. They are. And of course, we know that. MAGA knows that. Everybody in the world knows that. The casualty rate would skyrocket. You know, there's only a few U.S. casualties as this war has been dragging on for 70 plus days. There's probably a little bit more than the United States is willing to admit for obvious reasons. However, again, if there's a ground element, that number will skyrocket and it will be catastrophic. And by the way, the approval rating for the war will plummet. It's already not so good, especially with younger people, but you can bet that it'd be a whole lot lower if U.S. personnel just start dying in the large numbers of the masses. This is what's happened in Iraq. This is what's happened in Afghanistan. But I've always said this war, wow, we got to finish the article here. This war is so much worse than the previous ones, than the Iraq war, than all of the Gulf conflicts that we've been in. And the reason why is because Iran is actually a formidable foe. And so by starting this war, we effectively poked the bear. We charged them up to, if they were planning on making a nuclear weapon, now they're set on making one. Now they know they have to make one, right? If they were kind of flirting with the idea, now it's no longer flirtation. It's we must do this for our own security, for our guarantee of self-determinations, for our sovereignty. And, you know, it could have been the situation that Donald Trump conceded and just had some diplomacy rang out with Iran, and Oman offered him the opportunity to do this earlier in his administration. He rejected it, and he had the Obama nuclear plan set out for him on his table in the Oval Office. He tarnished it. He absolutely pulled out of the deal and then started the war back up, at least a Cold War with Iran, for like 4 or 5 years before we actually started killing their leaders. In 2018, he tarnished the JCPOA, or the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. And then 2020, 2024, and several years after that, we killed several leaders that were a part of Iran's proxy network, or their axis of resistance. And so, this is why me and my brother always say the whole nuclear excuse is so silly, because this was addressed in its entirety and it was taken care of. So to pull out of a deal that could have been the first step to them completely eradicating their nuclear program and enriching uranium as a whole shows that there was a greater goal at purpose. What is that goal? Regime change. Obviously, the goal of Netanyahu is to have an Israeli favored leader in Iran. That way Israel can get what they want. Maybe that means they control the Strait of Hormuz. And if Israel controls the Strait of Hormuz, that's even more of a reason for them not to need the United States economically. I mean, think about it. If Israel controlled the Strait of Hormuz, if they were tolling ships instead of Iran, if they completely overthrew the Iranian regime and had a leader there that would share the money that they're making from tolling these ships and make it official on a global stage, well, then the leniency, or really the leaning upon U.S. for financial support, would certainly shrink to the point where maybe they wouldn't need us anymore. I don't know if that's actually going to happen. I'm just saying maybe that's a plan. That's speculation, but they don't want Iran there because of the fact that they can make money on that strait. But ultimately, the main reason that everybody knows this is because Iran has the ballistic missiles program that's very dangerous to Israel. Mid-range missiles that are, many of them hypersonic, they can use them whenever they want. There's no real air defense system that can stop these missiles. We saw that in the 12-day war back in the summer. We saw that with the bombing campaign, or the back and forth bombing back in April. And they also have the nuclear program, but they also have the proxy network, and that's also a big threat to Israel. They fund and they prop up Hezbollah, which is in southern Lebanon, right on the border of northern Israel. And then they also supported Hamas during the conflict for 28 months, the Israel-Hamas war. That's still kind of ongoing in some way. And they partially funded the Houthis in Yemen, and then they also funded Iraqi proxy groups. And so, or militant groups. And so for Israel, the main issue is Iran. If they can get them out the way, they've got the regions to themselves. They're home base, they're chilling. Iran is the last leg standing of any sort of resistance. And you got to go all the way back to the 40s and the 50s. You had the Arab leaders that opposed Israel. I talked about this last night or 2 nights ago. You had Ghulam Abdel Nasser, who was the Egyptian pan-Arab nationalist leader who opposed Israel. That's why Israel sided with the French. There was so much more resistance from Arab countries prior in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, but as time went on, the U.S. support ensured Israel can slowly but surely weaken and destroy any threat in the region. And so now we've gotten to the point in the 2020s, now 2026, where there's really no threat. Some of these countries have gone as far as to even sign the Abraham Accords, like Morocco, like I believe the UAE, yes, and Sudan. But now there's no other country that even threatens them. They all recognize them to some level, and Iran's kind of the only thing in the way. And I know that's like long-winded explanation, but when they say nuclear, you really got to pull back all the layers there. It's not about nukes, it's regime change, because Israel wants autonomy over the Middle East. It's not a difficult concept to understand. If you go back to Netanyahu's statements in the 90s and the early 2000s, this is what he's always saying. We have to remove the Iraqi regime. We have to remove the Libyan regime. We have to remove the threat in Afghanistan. We have to take care of Iraq. We have to take care of Syria. Syria has way too many threats in the north. Bashar al-Assad is supporting Iranian proxy groups to go over across his land and give Hezbollah weapons. He is allowing Soviet air power to infiltrate and have presence there. That's not favorable for us in the United States either. So slowly but surely, they trickled everything down, got rid of every single threat, but Iran still stands strong. And, it only makes sense that, of course, this war has been long-winded and difficult because Iran's been sensing this. They know it's been coming. And they've been knowing that it's coming for years because they've watched every single one of their neighbors get eradicated. So for them, they're just doing homework, studying up, and waiting for their turn. And their turn was on February 28th. That's when we started our last Middle Eastern forever war. Because I can tell you for sure and for certain, if we are to beat Iran and achieve this great regime change, that's really it for us in the Middle East. We have no other business there. The only reason we're ever in the Middle East is to help Israel anyways. And so from the 60s onward, that's always been the case. That will continue to be the case until the axis of resistance is done. And it's completely destroyed. It's toppled. And we eradicate the regime from the top down. And that's what we're trying to do. We killed the supreme leader, but they have mosaic defense. And this is what I mean when I'm saying they have done their homework. They've studied throughout the years. Look how much leadership we've killed in Iran. And look how it slowed them down. It has not. It's really had little effect because they've built up a military structure where it can operate independently of this ultimate hierarchical leadership. They have all of these different factions that operate independently. And so they're already given commands before anything can actually happen, or they're given commands for what if theoretical situations. So they always know what to do when something happens. And we knew that was the case because when the religious leader was killed, they had this organized missile campaign against 8 or 9 Gulf countries in the span of a week that tarnished several oil assets, that hit so much critical infrastructure, that hit our military bases in the region, made some of them non-operational, hit our largest power plant for our largest base, Al Udeid, in Qatar. So, I mean, you look at everything, it's obvious they've studied, it's obvious they've been ready, and now this is like their last fight. This is for the existence of their people. This is an existential threat they're facing, and they have created this rally around the flag effect where everybody in the country is going, hey, even if we didn't like the IRGC prior, there's no better time to get behind them than now because our right of existence is being threatened. And we know this because Donald Trump says the most outlandish things, as well as Pete Hegseth. We're going to send them back to the Stone Age, or we're going to end a whole civilization. We're going to bomb their power plants. I mean, if you were against the IRGC and the opposing military that's been bombing the area you live in is saying these things, would you still be supporting them if you knew the ultimate goal of that bombing campaign was to plant a U.S. Israeli-backed leader in your nation? By the way, that same idea in 1953 is what caused Iran to have so much destabilization, and then the Islamic Revolution in 1979, which is why they've been in a Cold War with Israel and the United States ever since. It's for this thirst of regime change that does nothing for them. So you want to start somewhere. We can't just do regime change. That's never worked in the Middle East historically. It's got to be diplomacy. And Obama had the right idea. So, you know, I just said screw the article and started going crazy. I'm sorry. We'll finish the article. Let me get back to the article. Where were we? Where was the... It's so hot in here. I got to turn the AC on. Anyways, Mr. Trump said in an interview aired on Sunday that the United States was surveilling Iran's remaining enriched uranium stockpile, which could enable the country to build a nuclear weapon, and that it would get that at some point. Oh, yeah, you're damn right it would get it at some point. However, that was not the case before. Now it's certainly the case because we've threatened them. In the interview released by the syndicated news show Full Measure, he repeatedly claimed that the United States was monitoring sites that contain the uranium. He warned that if anybody got near the place, we will know about it and will blow them up. The president's messaging on the importance of existing uranium stockpiles has been inconsistent. Last month, Mr. Trump said he did not care about the uranium because it was buried so far underground. And some of that is true, but they've been working to unbury it in this long-winded ceasefire. And by the way, I'm sorry, I got to say this before it leaves or slips my mind. You know, we've had this ceasefire. It's not really a ceasefire because we're mowing the lawn and we keep bombing Iran, stepping back, bombing them, stepping back. But this is giving them time. If we're not actually bombing them like we were in the first 40 days, this is giving them time to build up their missiles, to build up their drones, and worst of all, to continue enriching or enrich past 90%, which allows for them to make this big, scary bomb that everybody's raving about J.D. Vance and Donald Trump. So, because that's the line of rhetoric they use. They say this big, dirty bomb. And so, you know, every waking second, every moment that passes as I'm talking to you now, and every day that follows, and every week and every month, we're not at like full-scale kinetic strikes with Iran or at war with them. What do you think they're doing? I mean, you use your mind. I don't have to be Mr. Expert here, and I'm not an expert, but I mean, use your mind. What would you be doing? If you had 60% enriched uranium and the strongest nation in the world that teamed up with your worst enemy in the world, bombed you for 40 days straight, now you've had 40 days of somewhat of peace and quiet, what would you be doing with that 60% enriched uranium? I think it's pretty obvious what you'd probably be doing with that 60%. Anyways, let's get back here. In the back and forth since the start of the ceasefire, Tehran and the United States have offered few details about their proposals, but on Thursday, as Iran was reviewing the United States' latest offer, Mr. Trump gave some specifics. It's an offer that basically said they will not have nuclear weapons. He said they're going to hand us a nuclear dust and many other things, the nuclear dust and many other things that we want. The president often refers to Iran's near bomb-grade uranium as dust, though the material is stored in canisters, typically as a gas. Mr. Trump has said that a deal has remained. These guys hate Trump, and I'll admit that, because they're just taking jabs at him any moment they get. or any opportunity they're given to take jabs at him. So I get it. This is somewhat biased, but this is true here. Mr. Trump has said that a deal has remained elusive because Iran lacks leadership after the United States and Israel killed much of the leadership's top ranks. Mr. Trump and Iranian officials have also offered signals suggesting a lack of trust between the two parties. When asked on Thursday whether Iran had agreed to the United States' demand that it abandon nuclear ambitions, Mr. Trump said that they had, added, when they agree, it doesn't mean much because the next day they forget. Now, I think that's you. The president also warned that if Iran did not agree to the latest deal, it was going to have a lot of pain. Again, more empty threats. His rejection of the Iranian offer came as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel said in an interview with CBS 60 Minutes that the conflict with Iran was not over. He said that was in part because Iran had yet to give up the material that Israel feared could one day be made into a nuclear weapon. And I think that's it for, we don't need to go any further because we're actually going to segue straight into all of those clips with Netanyahu on 60 Minutes, which let's fingers crossed that I don't get absolutely smoked with copyright, but we know how YouTube is. YouTube cut me a break here. But we'll just go through some of these clips that are surfacing here on X. Like I said, guys, I would watch the entire 60 Minutes, but I just literally can't because I'll get copywritten. So I got some chats that piled up on me as I was talking. So let me go ahead and catch up on these. Did a lot says, all I said before is that you're pro-Iran. I'm a fan, though. Okay, thanks for the $2. I mean, I've stated my position several times. Ibrahim says, do you watch UFC? Yeah, I do watch UFC. And that was a really good fight. However, I did not. I mean, did anybody think that Sean would win? Everybody had Hamzat winning. And I'll say this. Sean is a good fighter. I thought Hamzat was just going to wrestle him around for 5 rounds. I thought Hamzat was going to. I watched the fight. I thought Hamzat was going to wash him for 5 rounds because that's what he does. And I think Hamzat beat Duplessis. I think Duplessis beat Strickland via wrestling. So I was thinking like, oh, Hamzat's going to kill Strickland with wrestling because his wrestling's even better than Duplessis, but that wasn't the case. But no, good for Sean Strickland. He had nice words after the fight, I guess. These guys sell fights. It's what they do. I didn't think it was rigged. I thought it was fair. Fair split decision. I think it could have went either way, but I mean, good W overall. The Scribed Voices says, even though he won't, but if J.D. Vance came out and said no more Israel with huge ego charisma, he could pull away more voters than Rubio, in my opinion. Yeah, 100%. And this is the thing with J.D. Vance. This is why he's struggling. He has to straddle this line of sympathizing with the pro-Israel crowd and the donors, but also sympathize with the youth that hates Israel, and also sympathize with the Gen Xers and the millennials that are somewhere in the middle or somewhere far along one of those two sides of the spectrum. So it's tough for him. Now, if he drew the line in the sand and picked a side and was actually centered in his thinking, yeah, that would make him so much more popular, but then he'd have no money. Because that's all he does. He gets money from these big donors, especially these little tech companies and big tech. Just SK8 says, what if Iran wins? What if Israel wins? What next? Huh? What if Iran wins versus, what if Iran wins versus what if Israel wins? Bro, maybe I'm an idiot. I don't understand your question. I don't understand the question, bro. I'm losing cells trying to keep up. Thanks for the super chat, though. Ken Rose, thank you so much for the 5. Michaka, thank you for the 507 to you, my friend. Justified Misogyny, good name. If they strike mainland U.S., does the USA go all in? We nuke them. We nuke them. If Iran hit mainland U.S., we'd probably nuke them. They would never do that. They also don't have the ability to do that. That would never happen. But in a dream scenario, right, like in theory, if you were dreaming, yeah, I guess they hit the U.S., but the U.S. would nuke them. They would never do that. They would never do that. They have all the U.S. assets in the Middle East to target, so they make it painful for us with that alone. But yeah, we would nuke them. They would turn into radioactive dust if they hit mainland U.S. And they know that. They know that. So, anyways, okay. So let's watch some of these Netanyahu clips. YouTube, please spare me. Okay. Let's go ahead and
attributes the reputational harm to Israel almost entirely to social media.
So this was today, guys.
Which he calls the eighth front of the war.
Because it's this. This is yours, right? Mm-hmm. You're not immune either. Because you can penetrate This machine, you can penetrate this.
I have to. You can penetrate that machine, huh? Yeah, we know. Take a look at this. You want to know what happened in 2024? We know. Oh, big Yahoo, we know, my friend. 2024 Lebanon electronic device attacks. On the 17th and 18th of September 2024, thousands of handheld pagers and hundreds of walkie-talkies intended for use by Hezbollah exploded simultaneously in two separate events across Lebanon and Syria. An Israeli attack nicknamed Operation Grim Beeper. So, if you guys weren't familiar, and my brother refers to this all the time, this was a series of explosions on pagers that Hezbollah, the militant group supported by Iran, and Iranian proxy, were using to communicate within one another or with each other. And they all exploded in many of their hands. I think 12 people were killed. Several others were injured. And so, like, it's just ironic that he's bringing up, like, you know, this can be hacked. This can be, you don't know, this isn't safe. Like, you're the one who's the problem, bro. You're the one. Like, what are you talking about?
This little instrument, and you can say about Major Garrett anything you want, and I can paint you as a monster. And if I say it often enough people will believe it.
Do you believe Israel is at risk of losing this war on that social media front? And this is particularly, I believe, important in America for younger Americans, Republican and Democrat, scrolling through images, and they would use words like barbaric in Gaza and in Lebanon.
Israel has gone to unbelievable lengths to get innocent civilians out of harm's way. We text message.
Give me a break. Give me a break. They're still bombing Gaza.
Millions of text messages to them. Make millions of phone calls to them. Pamphlets, leaflets, you name it, okay? We have seen the deterioration of the support for Israel in the United States almost, I would say it correlates almost 100% with the geometric rise of social media. And that by itself is not what caused it, and I don't believe in.
And look, this is what I was saying earlier at the beginning of the stream. This is the first clip. I saw this earlier. But there's been an unintentional overlap of interests and common ideas against Israel from the right and the left and anybody in between. That's been the case, whether you have political views that are very right-wing or left-leaning or you're libertarian, whatever it is, people have been able to agree on one thing: Israel genocided Gaza. Israel is annexing the West Bank. Israel is dragging the United States into conflicts in the Middle East that don't help us. Everybody's been privy to that or understanding that recently. And so it's impossible to censor that because there's no one base demographic that, if censored, will actually remedy the issue. You go and you take out the right-wingers, people on the left are going to talk about it. You censor Anna Kasparian, you still have Nick Fuentes. So it's really no way around it other than to address it head on and just kind of be the bad guy. And that's what Israel's effectively done. Because if you've been paying attention, the censorship campaign has slowed down. Some of that, I suppose, thanks to the Trump administration. But, you know, if a Democrat gets elected in 2028, especially one that's a little bit more pro-Israel, we never know what happens or we never know what will happen. Well, then you can bet that censorship will probably ramp back up. Now, Democrats just sent a letter to Marco Rubio and the Trump administration demanding that the United States acknowledge Israel's secret nuclear program. And I mean, you look at all of these things in between, you really start to make the realization, oh my God, things are changing. Like, even political officials, people with power within Congress that have seats in Congress in the House, are demanding Israel admit something that they agreed with a former U.S. president in 1969, Richard Nixon, to keep private, which was their nuclear program. And prior to that, John F. Kennedy fought tooth and nail to get them to have inspections, to formalize this nuclear program, involve some sort of formality so that it can be inspected. And that was because of the fact that they had constant tensions with their Arab neighbors. He was very afraid of what could transpire if Israel gets their hand on a nuclear weapon or a big bomb. And he tried to stop them, and he fell short. He was assassinated, so it never happened. But, you know, you look at everything now, the tide is certainly turning. The pendulum has now begun to swing in the other direction, and it's a matter of time until there's very little U.S. support for Israel. It's already happening within the civilian population, but it's going to take some time for it to trickle into the political level, but it will happen. And even within the GOP, it's starting to dwindle. Republicans are starting to be against this war slowly but surely. Some senators are starting to be against this war. And then you have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who stepped down. And it was kind of because of the Epstein thing, I believe. Some news came out about that, but also she's against this war in Iran, and Tucker Carlson's against this war in Iran, and Megyn Kelly's against this war in Iran, Alex Jones is against this war in Iran, and all the other big right-wing names. The only idiots that are still for this war are the ones that care about Israel, like Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro saying, this is the most fantastic thing that Donald Trump has ever done. So it is kind of over for them. But, and this is, look, if you are somebody who is, and we'll get to the clip where he says he's going to cease from leaning on the United States so heavily, but if you're somebody who is for the cause and you want the United States to not be controlled by this country, well then, this is a good sign, but this is also really scary, because what does this mean for the future? What is Israel going to do? Because they're not just about to stop existing, and their existence is contingent upon our financial support. They're not asking for that financial support anymore. So what filled the gap? What's filling the void? And what's making them so secure to do that? Because remember, this is a country that has betrayed us several times. They had intelligence about several terror attacks that happened to U.S. servicemen, to U.S. civilians, and never gave us the heads up on it. They let it happen so that we could be charged up in fighting their wars. Maybe even false flag attacks they were involved in, and we can go down the conspiracy rabbit hole, but really you get the bigger picture. So if they're capable of doing that while they're our greatest ally, what will they do when they no longer need us? These things are quite concerning. There's some food for thought, but we'll finish the clip.
And censoring them or anything, but I'll tell you what happened. We have several countries that basically manipulated social media, and they do it in a clever way. And that's something that has hurt us badly.
Is it your belief, Mr. Prime Minister, that nothing that Israel has done, tactically or...
Let me minimize this. Maybe that'll help my case with copyright.
...strategically has made no mistakes, either in Gaza or the West Bank, that have, in their own way, contributed to this negative impression of Israel, whether it's on social media or someplace else?
No, of course. Look, it's war. And in war, armies sometimes miss. And
sometimes miss? Okay, so you just accidentally always miss and shoot families that are trying to get food at the aid sites you set up? Yeah, sometimes miss. Okay.
Civilians die. And these are mistakes. These are not deliberate.
No, it's all intentional. It's all intentional. They just shot some guy who had a newborn baby in the head in the West Bank like 3 days ago.
Things that happen. Israel is besieged on the media front, on the propaganda front, and we've not done well on the propaganda war.
Yeah, you damn sure you haven't. And look, this is true because Charlie Kirk wrote a letter to Benjamin Netanyahu, I believe just a few months before his assassination, I think sometime in May of last year. So about a year ago now at this point. And this is the letter. It says, from the desk of Charlie Kirk. And he's pretty much asking Benjamin Netanyahu to bolster his stance and try to take back control of large-scale media companies and these corporations so he can push his own propaganda, because the pro-Palestine sentiment is becoming concerning. He's getting bad questions on college campuses, ones that he can't answer, ones in regards to Israel being a apartheid colonialist state that is genociding Palestinians. And so we can read the letter here. This reads, so this is Charlie Kirk to Benjamin Netanyahu, and it reads, one of my greatest joys as a Christian is advocating for Israel and forming alliances with Jews in the fight to protect Judeo-Christian civilization. Most recently, I am proud to have taken over Ambassador Huckabee's show on TBN, where we continually support Israel and the Jewish people. As Mohammedism spreads into Western societies, it's critical that Jews and Christians stay united in the effort to contain and roll back radical Islam and Sharia law. I apologize for laughing, but some of this is comical as you can take it. I'm sure you guys agree. I regret to report that anti-Israel and anti-Semitic trends are at record levels on social media. These negative sentiments then flow downstream into college campuses and even seep into the conservative MAGA community. My team and I have spent months analyzing these trends and debating ideas that could help you and your country push back against these disturbing developments. Anti-Israel sentiment can undermine American support for Israel. The purpose of this letter is to lay out our concerns and outline potential remedies. Everything written here is from a place of deep love for Israel and the Jewish people. I think it's important to be brutally honest with those you love. In my opinion, Israel is losing the information war and needs a, quote, communications intervention. I started to compose this letter to you on Easter. I should have been focused on my family, but I was getting bombarded with these messages about the Israeli army making it difficult for Christians to access the church in Jerusalem on Easter. At the time, I did not see any official statements pushing back on this narrative. It was frustrating because pro-Israel surrogates like me should not be in charge of fact-checking every piece of anti-Israel misinformation that pours into social media. It wasn't just Easter. On my recent campus tours, half the questions I get are about Israel, and they're all negative. I often spend half my time on these campus tours defending Jews in Israel, which I'm proud to do because I love Israel and I love the Jewish faith. I spent endless hours with Dennis Prager over the years studying the Torah, sometimes, which is the Hebrew Bible, right? It's Christian scripture as well in some regard. It feels like I'm defending Israel in public more than your own government. My experience on college campuses matches a recent Harvard-Harris poll, which reported 48% of 18 to 24-year-old Americans support Hamas over Israel. Even in young MAGA circles, Israel is losing support. We are getting huge crowds of 4,000 to 5,000 students on some of my college tours. My campus visits are becoming like a rock concert atmosphere filled with conservative patriots, yet on these campus visits, I'm constantly confronted with the following questions. Israel, or statements really. Israel is an apartheid state. Let me move myself over. Did they just give me an ad reading this letter? Okay, we're going to have to pause here. Are you serious? I'm going to a different website. I can make a joke, but I'm just not going to make the joke. Like I'm reading a letter about. Okay, it's fine. It's fine. Let me see if I can get this thing back up. And while we're waiting, I'll read some chats. Young Dolph 99 says the Great Awakening. Yeah. I mean, it's happening real time in front of us here. I could make a joke. I should make the joke. Anyways, I might have to speed up the reading here before I get another advertisement. Lord have mercy. Ad break here, guys. Give me a moment. Okay, thank you. So it reads, put myself right there. Boom. Israel is an apartheid state. Why does Israel conduct ethnic cleansing? Why is America subsidizing Israel's genocide against the Palestinian people? Is American aid helping to subsidize Israel's free healthcare? Israel and the Jews are running U.S. foreign policy. Israel and the Jews are responsible for 9/11. Defending Israel is not in our U.S. national interest. Why is Israel trying to drag us into a war in the Middle East? All questions from college students. Above are just a sampling of the negative Israel/Jewish comments and questions I confront on college campuses. I'm accused of being a paid apologist for Israel when I defend her. Her is crazy. However, if I don't defend Israel strongly enough, I'm accused of being anti-Semitic. I know you've got a 7-front war, and my kvetching pales in comparison, but I'm trying to convey to you that Israel is losing support even in conservative circles. This should be a 5-alarm fire. I'm often asked, why is Israel killing so many innocent civilians in Gaza? I know Israel goes to great lengths by dropping flyers and even calling civilians to clear out areas about to be bombed. I know Israel posts maps showing which areas could be or should be evacuated. I know that Hamas uses civilians as human shields, but 90% of the... Yeah, you know all of these things, but that... Obviously, they're ineffective, which is why you're writing this letter. But 90% of the younger generation gets their news from social media and podcasts, and there's very little pushback or fact-checking by the Israeli government and or pro-Palestine or pro-Israel supporters in the media, especially social media. I strongly suggest Israel not always depend on subcontracting their information war efforts to surrogates in America. Mr. Prime Minister, I urge you to revamp your information warfare strategy from top to bottom. Sometimes the impression is given that Israel thinks everyone hates them, so why care about winning over hearts and minds? If there's any truth to this impression, I urge you to consider that social media and podcasts is where you fight for the hearts and minds of the younger generation. Obviously, all of this negative Israel propaganda on social media easily translates into pro-Hamas or free Palestine sentiment on many college campuses. And you see here, I mean, just look at the language. It says pro-Hamas, free Palestine. No, but these are two different things. See, and this is an important distinction to draw out. Just because somebody's free Palestine doesn't necessitate that they're pro-Hamas, okay? And if you have any semblance of knowledge, you know that. But of course, he combines the two. And this is what I'm talking about with the propaganda. The first step, if you guys actually want to gain some sort of or cover some sort of ground in this war on social media, stop being disingenuous. So that's why I inputted the or, because it is two different things here. Here are some unsolicited recommendations my team and I suggest if you're open-minded to a communications reset. For starters, you need a rapid response media team. President Trump does this very effectively on social media with his own account and his White House Rapid Response 47 team. The president has strong fighters like Stephen Miller and Carolyn Levitt who battle the press every day. Honestly, I don't even know if you have a press secretary. You are an eloquent defender of Israel, but you need a team of information warriors out there pushing back every day. Speaking of Caroline Levitt, by the way, who was the White House press secretary, get this. I'm sure some of you may have seen this. She just had a baby, so congrats to her. And she got absolutely radioed by, ratioed by, what was it, the Iranian embassy or something like that on X. Here, I'll pull this up for you guys. This was crazy. This was like a really bad ratio as well. She posted her baby, and they brought up like the school bombing, which is nuts. See if I could find it here. And I got a chat. I'll read it in 1 second. So, IRL embassy in Armenia. So, Carolyn Levitt, she posted on Twitter. She says, on May 1st, Viviana, a.k.a. Vivi, joined our family and our hearts instantly exploded with love. She is perfect and healthy, and her big brother is joyfully adjusting to his life with his new baby sister. We are enjoying every moment in our blissful newborn bubble. The IRI embassy, sorry, I said IRL, IRI embassy in Armenia says, congratulations to you. Children are innocent and lovable. Those 168 children that your boss killed in the school in Minab and you justified were also children. When you kiss your baby, think of the mothers of those children. Yikes. Oh, no, not Don DeMarco, sorry. I mean, yeah, Don DeMarco too. So, and let's see if we can find the actual tweet itself. But yeah, it was crazy. It had like millions of likes. Let's see if I could find the post here. Yeah, so this is her post. Got 325K likes, whatever. 30 million views, nearly 22.7. And they didn't ratio her, but they almost did. Sorry. 158,000 likes, 4.7 million views. Real bad. Talk about media war, huh? Talk about media war. Anyways, let's get back to Bibi and his interview. And like the video if you haven't already, let me go ahead and read this chat that came in. Okay. That ad was promised to us 3,000 years ago. Yeah, I know. Crazy. Netanyahu looks sick. He does look sick. I must say, I didn't want to be like, oh my God, but he actually does really look unhealthy. I mean, take a look at him here.
Reputational
And
harm.
these guys wear makeup. I mean, he looks like orange here, but he's not looking all that good. And I know he has like cancer or something now. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, these guys are all old. These guys are all old, but he's a sick, evil man. So maybe it's just karmic retribution. Thanks for the super chat, though. PFF says, AP News, July 30th, 2023, article titled, Thousands Take to Street in Gaza in Rare Public Display of Discontent with Hamas. So, yeah, Gazans do not equal Hamas. Yeah, exactly. Thank you for the super chat. And also, 213 Killzone also sent a chat. Brazil, Italy, Argentina, Peru, Mexico, Thailand, and even here in the U.S., Israelis are getting kicked out from restaurants and tourist sites. October 7th was the nail in the coffin for Israel. Absolutely. Thank you for the super chat, my friend. Yeah, I saw clips in Italy of people being kicked out of restaurants. And it's more prevalent in Europe, I have to say. There's a lot more support for them here at home in the United States. But, yo, it's changing. The tide is really turning, and it's a good thing, but it also scares me because there's going to be some sort of response to that. And what does that look like? What does that entail? You know, you do have to ask those kinds of questions. It's never that easy. It's never that perfect. You can write a story like that and it's all fun and good in the end, like a Disney fairy tale. But in reality, I don't think Israel just disenfranchises from the United States and walks away. No, because they would have no guarantee of security in the Middle East. And of course, we'll still support them militarily and everything. But the financial component is concerning. We give them a ton of money, but I'm sure they can fill that gap somewhere else. But it is a step in a direction that is, of course, positive for us. But to me, it shows that, or it's at least a tell that Netanyahu has something up his sleeve in regards to some other backing or some other source of money that we're not privy to. And yeah, with the whole like Gaza Hamas thing, you know, again, in that letter, he says pro-Hamas, free Palestine people. And it's like, no, you don't have to support anything that Hamas does that's wrong. You shouldn't. At the same time, you can still be free Palestine. And the whole notion of free Palestine is to give the people sovereignty. The reason why people say free Palestine is because they're under a vicious military occupation, one that they've been under and forced to deal with since 1950, 1948. And they were expelled from their land. Whether you are against colonialism or you don't care about it, because I guess that's how we're here as well, you do have to acknowledge the fact that 750,000 Palestinians were expelled from their homes and their land. It was taken from them. And the Jewish people in Israel, they call this the Nekba. This is like a thing. And ever since then, they've been pushed further and further into what is now the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, these Palestinian occupied territories that have little freedom within them. Gaza Strip is an open air prison. They don't have access to the same things that anyone else in the world has access to. They can't do maritime trade. They can't do anything along their coastline. You know, so, and this is, look, Charlie Kirk is no longer alive. So I'm not going to entertain the notion of attacking him endlessly for the next hour, right? I could, but it takes a little bit of a backbone, regardless of your ideology, your religion, your politics, to stand with the people of Palestine and feel some sympathy for what they've gone through. It takes a little bit of a backbone, you know, and I respect everybody who does it. But if you go so far in the other direction and don't acknowledge the fact that Israel was just carpet bombing Gaza at one point, it's nasty, to say the least. It really is nasty. But yeah, they're losing the media war. They certainly are. And
this philosophy that you have, that when Israel is strong, it extinguishes this sense that it can be eliminated.
You know, you might think that we have this disrespect and this antagonism all over the world, but that's not true. We had a visit here. First of all, many Americans support Israel, respect Israel, have not succumbed to the slanderous.
But the numbers are out of balance in ways they seem
correct,
to be.
and for the reason I told you, because I think there's been a concerted effort by several states.
No. It's because you killed 100,000 people in 2 years. That's why everybody's against you. You know, Israel was under the noses and under the radar of so many people around the world, especially here in the United States. Europeans are a lot more privy to geopolitics, I've noticed, than Americans. Americans are really dumb as to what's happening outside of the country. But regardless, you know, no one was really paying attention to Israel or anything they were doing or how they existed or came about ever, really. Not to the degree that they are now. And what started everything was October 7th. And Israel knew what was going to happen on October 7th, yet they let it happen so that they could bomb and eventually annex Gaza, ethnically cleanse it, and take it for their own. That's the plan. Netanyahu has voiced that idea before, and even some people in the Middle Eastern envoy, Jared Kushner, have said similar things. So you look at everything the way it stands, it's not that, oh, you guys are Jewish and you have your own state. No, you killed so many children, and people saw it on videos, and people then became aware of what was happening in the West Bank and then southern Lebanon, and now they're seeing what you're doing in Iran, and then they go back to Iraq and realize you were involved, and then they go further back even more, and they realize you had to do with the YouTube. We're going to stop.
To basically vilify Israel in the primarily in the social media, in the standard media too, but that's less effective. The effective thing is in the social media. and we've not fought back yet. So we'll have to do that.
And it's like, these are scary things. We have not fought back yet. What is he planning on doing? You know what I mean? And then this is him talking about the Iran war. This comment is pretty funny. You interview demons that lead a terror colony. That's good. Anyways, that's good.
Is the war with Iran over? And if it isn't, who will decide when it is?
I think it accomplished a great deal, but it's not over because there's still nuclear material, enriched uranium, that has to be taken out of Iran.
Oh, you don't say. That's what I've been saying since like forever.
There's still enrichment sites that have to be dismantled. There's still proxies that Iran supports. There are ballistic missiles that they still want to produce. Now, we've degraded a lot of it, but all of that is still there, and there's work to be done.
How do you envision the highly enriched uranium will be removed from Iran?
You go in and you take it out.
Thank you. So to all the idiots that say, oh, there's not going to be a boots on ground, oh, that's not going to happen, they're never going to let that happen. Well, who has more influence, you or him? Last time I checked, you're a nobody. Last time I checked, he runs our president.
With what? Special forces from Israel? Special forces from the United States?
Well, I'm not going to talk about military means, but what President Trump has said to me, I want to go in there. And I think it can be done physically. That's not the problem. If you have an agreement and you go in and you take it out, why not? That's the best way.
What if there isn't an agreement? Can it be taken out by force?
Well, you're going to ask me these questions. I'm going to dodge them because I'm not going to talk about our military possibilities, plans, or anything of the kind.
And I'm just trying to get at how long is it going to take to achieve that aim?
I'm not going to give a timetable to it, but I'm going to say that's a terrifically important mission.
And this is what he's been saying for months. This is him back in March saying there has to be a ground component in Iran. March 19th, 2026, here is the date. So we all know what this means. Okay?
Told us surprised how many Arab states are interested in strengthening ties with Israel.
I now see the possibility of the expansion and the deepening of the agreements we do have to alliances with Arab states of the kind that we never even dreamed of.
There is concern rising among the Gulf monarchies that it will not allow and does not want Israel to exercise.
Abu Ace says, Bibi looks sick and skinny in this interview. Alhamdulillah. Yeah, facts. Thank God. Thank God. The war criminal may be on his way out, but I'm not sure his successor will be any better.
Strategic dominance over the Middle East. So has any of this been jeopardized?
I'm hearing different things. I'm hearing the fact from Arab countries, which I won't get into.
All of them?
No. But
he's doing a lot of tittle-tallying here, or tattletaling here in his interview. First, he says there's going to be a ground element again. And then he says Trump tells him he wants to go in and take the uranium, a.k.a. boots on ground invasion, because that's what it's going to have to be. And now he's saying Arab states want to do business. They want to do diplomacy. Bro's exposing everybody. And we know the UAE shares a really close relationship with Israel. We know that for a fact. The Emirates are all cucked out already. Not even a secret. But I mean, who could he be referring to here? Maybe other Gulf nations, Saudi, I don't know. Saudi was pretty close to signing the Abraham Accords at one point in time. So who knows who he's referring to?
some of them, and I never heard that before, let's strengthen our alliance with Israel, because that, in fact, deters Iran. Let's strengthen our alliance with
No, it really doesn't, actually. It really doesn't.
Israel, because we can do amazing things with Israel.
That was clearly the trajectory before this conflict.
You could look at it two ways. So you can look at it in two ways. You're a Gulf nation, and you build a closer relationship with the United States and Israel, and so that you can receive some sort of protection to the hostile threat being Iran. But that kind of falls flat on its face as an idea or a theory, because Iran's only attacking you because you're allied with the United States and Israel. And so the other way a Gulf state can go about this is say, hey, please exercise diplomacy, because us sharing a relationship with you, aka the United States, is warranting strikes on the military bases you installed here for a guarantee of our protection. And I think that's kind of the route that Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, Turkey, Egypt have kind of taken. They just want diplomacy. They want peace restoration in the region. They want the Strait of Hormuz opened up. And they don't really want to see any regime fall, for that matter. And of course, Saudi Arabia is not happy about the strikes from Iran, but at the same time, I'm sure they realize these strikes are only due to U.S. aggression. And there's been an over-prioritization of Israeli air defense over Saudi air defense, which is what they have echoed many times in recent months. Saudi spokespeople and political officials have said they're protecting Israel way more than us. And every other Gulf country in the region realizes that and understands that reality as well. And that's because of the fact that our defense system, our Patriot missile system, is stretched thin throughout the entire region. And we're stealing THAADs from South Korea to compensate for the lack of missile defense that we have in the Middle East. And, you know, the munitions running low and everything like that. I mean, it really is a disaster across the entire Middle East. But I can certainly see a Gulf country saying, let's stabilize our relations with Israel and take out Iran. But I think more often than not, the actual case is we need diplomacy. So maybe some of this is kind of a farce from Netanyahu to make it seem like everybody is on his side. But we do know the UAE is completely aligned with Israel at this point. Not a secret, not a conspiracy. It once was, now it's facts. But I mean, remember, Saudi and Kuwait just told the United States they cannot use their airspace or bases during Operation Freedom. A couple weeks ago, Donald Trump says, we're going to launch Operation Freedom. We're going to free some ships from out of the Strait of Hormuz, these oil vessels, about the 1,500 that are stuck in the Strait, in the Persian Gulf or whatever. And Saudi Arabia and Kuwait said, you can't use our airspace or our military bases. As a result of that, Donald Trump had to halt or pause Operation Freedom, and the U.S. Navy had to leave. The destroyers left the Strait. And so you're seeing one of the first examples of something that we've been predicting now for a long time over here is our Gulf nations or our Gulf relationships, especially with Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, the stronger countries, the bigger countries, especially when it comes to global oil, are going to disenfranchise with us slowly but surely if this is always what it looks like, which is the United States always poses this moral hazard because if we're strategically allied with them, it warrants a strike from Iran. And by the way, the only reason Donald Trump has not launched another bombing campaign on Iran is likely because of the fact that he knows the Gulf countries are going to feel it as a result. If we hit Iran, they're going to bomb desalination plants in the Middle East, especially if we hit their power plants. And these desalination plants are vital to the Middle East and these desert countries because they are void of agriculture, so they need water. And what these desalination plants do is they convert ocean water to fresh drinking water, as well as other purposes that they need. And without these plants, people can go without water in a matter of days or lose the access to water in a matter of days or weeks. That's what the experts say. And that's what Iran is threatening to strike. And they already struck partially a desalination plant in Kuwait, as well as the fact that Kuwait has not been able to export oil in over 30 days. So, I mean, think about this and imagine yourself in the shoes of Kuwait or even Saudi Arabia. You're not able to export most, if not all, your oil. Your desalination plants are getting hit. And the same person who caused all this disaster on your territory is coming back to you and saying, hey, we're going to launch another operation that doesn't sound good on paper. And we're going to use the bases in your country to station our military there and go from there. Do you think you're going to say yes? Of course you're going to say no. And so this is us losing power. Real time. That's what it looks like. And I understand right after these countries allowed them to use the bases, but it's not about them allowing them to use the bases overall. It's about when. The time is critical. We don't need those bases except for when we need them. And when we need them, we're denied access to them. Oh, but we have bases. Yeah, but we can't use them when we're trying to launch an operation to free up shipping lanes. So it's like they're effectively useless. They exist for nothing except show or symbolism. And that's not why they're there. They exist as a buffer for the United States to exercise our power anywhere in the world. That's why we have military bases all over the world. If we can't use them when we're launching these operations, when we have these plans for CENTCOM to use as a home base or grounds for an operation or a plan or a military campaign, well, then they may as well not be there. And that very well may be the conversation in the next 2 or 3 years, so long as this war persists and we put the threat or we put a target on these Gulf nations. So I don't know how much I believe that, but who knows? A lot of these Arab nations are cucked. Nick the trucking guy at $10. I'm not seeing anything on the Ukraine-Russian war. Are they still fighting? Do you have the peace agreement, or is this conflict more important? Do they have a peace agreement, or is this conflict more important to them? In regards to Russia-Ukraine, yeah, they're still fighting, and I think there's a 3-day ceasefire currently right now, as I was reading earlier today. Like all the temporary ceasefires we see throughout that conflict from when it started. But yeah, that's just been ongoing for the longest. Nothing new there.
More than you think now, in ways that I guess will become public. I can't give everything to 60 Minutes or to you in one shot, but I'm telling you that the degree of economic cooperation on energy, on AI, on quantum, the areas where Israel is so strong, and they see the possibility now of sharing the fruits of these capabilities with them. And that's happening right now.
Yeah, we'll see about that. I think that's a big bluff, but you never know. You never know. I mean, a lot of them have formalized relations already, so that could be the case.
To re-examine and possibly reset its
Let's see.
financial relationship to the United States, meaning, do you believe it's time for the state of Israel to re-examine and possibly reset its financial relationship to the United States, meaning what the United States provides to Israel on an annual basis?
Absolutely. And I've said this to President Trump. I've said it to our own people. Their jaws dropped. But I said, look.
Well, what do you mean? What are you saying?
I want to draw down to zero the American financial support, the financial component of the military cooperation that we have, because we receive $3.8 billion a year. And I think that it's time that we weaned ourselves from the remaining military support.
Can you give me a timetable?
I said, let's start now and do it over the next decade, over the next 10 years, but I want to start now. I don't want to wait for the next Congress. I want to start now.
That is super weird, to say the least. That is very, very weird, to say the least. And so here, let me find one that's a little bit smaller. Sorry, guys, I'm having to do this in a covert way, so I'm not copywritten. Let's see here. Okay. And I'll read this chat. I know I had one that just came in. But yeah, that's what he said. It's okay. I can't find the clip. But that's pretty much everything he said. He said he's waiting for the next Congress. He doesn't want any support from the United States anymore. So let's talk about that. I mean, to me, could that be a farce? I don't know. Democrats just sent a letter to Marco Rubio and the Trump administration asking for them to acknowledge Israel's nuclear program. You open TikTok, and despite the fact that Larry Ellison owns it, you still see a bunch of anti-Israel content. I still see it everywhere. They've kind of upped the policing and the censorship on the platform, but it's still not the way I anticipated it to be. Instagram, same thing, especially Instagram Reels. I mean, at one point, people like my brother, Sneako's kind of banned, but even him, Nick Fuentes, were all over Instagram Reels. Still are to some degree. They've tried to censor it, but to no avail. It has not worked. And, you couple in the fact of Charlie Kirk sending that letter. And so all of this is happening. Israel's losing the media war. Israel is struggling against southern Lebanon. 2,000 plus IDF soldiers killed in action. And they have not been able to really push the Palestinians out of Gaza. And I think the time frame they anticipated it to happen, because the real war in Gaza was about 2.5 years. They're still bombing Gaza here and there every so often, and they use some sort of arbitrary excuse as to why they do it every time it happens. And no one's condemning it in the world. No government is even saying anything anymore. We've become numb to it. But what I'm seeing is that Israel is not able to actually effectuate any of their military plans or goals. They're doing what they want, but they're not getting what they want. And so, to me, I think in Israel, in Tel Aviv, Maybe they're sitting down and going, we got to try something new. What that is, I don't know. But I think the pendulum is swinging in the other direction, and Israel is trying to get a step ahead of it, Benjamin Netanyahu and everybody else, Ben Gvir, and they're figuring something else out. I think their biggest goal currently, aside from Gaza and the West Bank and Lebanon, is, of course, to topple the Iranian regime, and that's proving very difficult, even though the United States is doing their dirty work. And I think that Netanyahu, in the beginning of this war, when he was talking to Donald Trump, thought that this would be quick, and that's what Donald Trump and the MAGA administration said. They said it'd be 4 to 5 days. Now it's 70 days. I mean, you think about all of these things. Really, it's concerning that they haven't been able to get what they want because now something else may be up their sleeve. I think a lot of people may see this and parade around and go, oh, Benjamin Netanyahu may be disenfranchising and he's pulling away from the United States. He doesn't want our financial support. Really, I mean, $3.8 billion is not that much money every single year. But ultimately, you know, and I think during the Gaza conflict, we gave him $12 billion up front. But ultimately, and I'm saying in the grand scheme of things, you really got to think about how much money these countries have. But he'll find it somewhere else. You know, elsewhere, the void will be filled. Militarily, I think they're going to have something else up their sleeve. And remember, they still have a nuclear weapon. And maybe, again, he's hearing through the grapevine. He's seeing the Democratic pressure. We know Democrats are going to flip the House in 2026, this year. In November, in the midterms, the GOP is likely going to lose a lot of legislative power after November. And so it's going to be very difficult for Trump to effectuate any of his laws or goals or anything he proposes to Congress. Kind of checks his executive power. Netanyahu knows that. Democrats, Joaquin Castro led the charge with 30 others signing the agreement or the letter to the administration saying Israel's nuclear program must be acknowledged. No more of this under the rug bullcrap. And so again, Netanyahu sees this. These same people are about to take Congress. I think he understands where the tide is turning. Gavin Newsom, a potential 2028 nominee for the presidential election or the presidential race, said in the beginning of this war that it was a bad idea and we're overextending our arm in support for Israel. Again, it's like Kamala Harris is condemning the war. Barack Obama obviously condemned the war. Joe Biden, when he was in office, fought very hard to revive the Iranian nuclear deal, the JCPOA. He also said no to bombing Iran, which Netanyahu begged him to do. They know Trump is the last cuck. Trump is probably the last president to follow all Israeli demands. I don't think there's going to be another person from the GOP, even outside the MAGA base or outside the MAGA base, that will do what the GOP is doing. Now, in regards to the left or the Democratic side, sure, we'll probably still send them money if he's serious here. I don't know. We'll find out. But we'll probably still support them. But to bomb Iran for them, we won't go that far. You know, so I think he's sensing what's coming. And this means a whole nother reality. And look, this is what we all dreamt of, but you know, we really can't take things for face value. We've got to kind of pull back some layers and see what's under all of that. Oh, we're going to wean the support. I mean, you know, that's really choice words for somebody like Benjamin Netanyahu to utter. And when I read that earlier, I was really confused. I thought that I was reading it wrong. You know, Benjamin Netanyahu says he wants to draw back on U.S. support, especially after the next Congress is elected. To me, that's really weird. But again, I think he just senses the energy that's actually coming into the White House. It's going to be a different energy than, you know, the one that we've seen. And, you know, you got things like this. And I went over this last stream. Congressman Castro leads group of 30 lawmakers in demanding end to ambiguity in Israel's nuclear capabilities. You know, and this is a couple excerpts out of the letter. But it says the lawmakers raised questions about the ambiguous U.S. policy regarding Israel's nuclear capabilities while engaging in war alongside Israel against Iran. Writing, we are in the fullest sense fighting this war side by side with a country whose potential nuclear weapons program the United States government officially refuses to acknowledge. American service members continue to be deployed throughout the region. Congress has constitutional responsibility to be fully informed about the nuclear balance in the Middle East, the risk of escalation by any party to this conflict, and the administration's planning and contingencies for such scenarios. We do not believe we have received that information. The lawmakers concluded by demanding the U.S. apply its non-proliferation standards, equally writing, we cannot develop coherent non-proliferation policy for the Middle East, including with respect to Iran's civil nuclear program and Saudi Arabia's civil nuclear ambitions. And also, you know, Israel having a nuke does encourage other countries in the region to try and chase or develop a nuclear weapon, because they're going to say, if Israel can have one, why can't we? And that's another thing that is very true. And that's the issue with Iran as well. And that's something I'll even acknowledge. We can't let Iran get a nuke, not because they're going to bomb everybody, because then every country in the region is going to race towards a nuke. And that is definitely not beneficial for the United States. But again, we can stop their nuclear program through diplomacy, not through bombing them. I'm not interested in removing the IRGC. I'm interested in removing their military power that can threaten the United States. That can mean removing the threat of a nuclear weapon. But you don't get there by bombing them. You get there by diplomacy. Because by bombing them, you only charge them up to race towards a nuke. But here, let's... Oh, why are we red pilling in the chat? Women? Why are we talking about women? A couple chats here. Described voices. That's when Russia and China steps in. Yeah, and by the way, Netanyahu had said he knows that Russia and China are supporting Iran, which is interesting as well. Let's see if we could find that clip. Appreciate the super chat. Thank you.
China gave a certain amount of support on particular components of missile manufacturing. But I can't say more than that.
Does that disturb you?
Well, I didn't like it.
Because it's apparently doing it right now.
Could be. Could be. I don't want to speak for China. I don't want to speak also.
But you have eyes and ears on this.
Yeah, well, but I also have a closed mouth when necessary.
Interesting. So, yeah, and it's obvious, right? Trump said China is not going to send Iran any weapons. I think he said that on Truth Social a few weeks ago, and we reacted to that on stream here. And I thought that was hilarious because it's like, hey, bro, they already sent them tons of weapons. And they already gave them the radar systems that likely helped shoot down a U.S. fighter jet, the F-15 jet that was shot down last month out of the sky. And then those 2 pilots went missing and we had to go find them. So, China is not only supporting Iran, they're supporting them in the most strategic ways that is making this that much more painful for us. And then Russia's giving them intelligence as well. And they're striking bases in the Middle East. And not only are they striking bases, but it seems that they're hitting targets in these bases very specifically that they know we have low stockpiles of. Like the E3, like the AWACS system that they hit in the Prince Sultan Air Base, which is just about southeast of Riyadh an hour in Saudi Arabia. There's an air base in Saudi Arabia belonging to the United States, and we had this radar system there that helped us a great deal in the air. Here, I'll show you guys better than I can tell you. And, could this be for the fact that Russia gave them intelligence? Russia is giving them tips on where to bomb? Who knows? But this is out of the Washington Post. Oh, okay. They're going to charge me for it. Let's see if we can find good article on this. You know what? We're just going to use X. We're not paying for it. So this was the damage to those air bases, and this could have been because of Russian intelligence. And these are the E3 or the AWACS systems. And if you're unfamiliar, I think it's Air Warning Control System is what it stands for. This is the plane right here. This is what it looks like. It has a big radar on the back, and this is Google, of course. It says Airborne Warning and Control System is an airborne radar surveillance and command and control platform designed to detect aircraft, ships, and vehicles at long ranges, providing a real-time battle space picture. Primarily based on the Boeing E-3 Sentry, it provides all-weather, all-altitude tracking and battle management for NATO and the U.S. Air Force. And we were running low on those, and they destroyed the remaining amounts in Saudi Arabia. So it's not that they're just bombing them. They're bombing like the most vital points of our infrastructure. Let's see. I had a chat come in. And if you're new here, please like the video. Appreciate all the love. Let's see. The Andrew Tate Show says he probably knows something about the future of the U.S. economy. What do you think? Yeah, maybe. I mean, this is what I'm saying. I don't want to be too conspiratorial. Benjamin Netanyahu says we're not working with the United States anymore on a financial basis. We don't need the 3.8 billion a year. Obviously, again, like I said, the house is about to flip. But could this be him sensing the failure of the petrodollar? You know, could this be him sensing the fact that the Eastern Hemisphere is about to charge up with their currency? BRICS is going to take over maybe in the next 20 years. You know, that's part of the reason why we bombed Venezuela, or not bombed, we regime changed Venezuela, is because, and that was a smooth regime change. It took 2 seconds. But the reason why we took out Maduro is because we needed more reserves and we needed more dependence on the petrodollar. You know, and also the fact that the United States recently has been making strategic moves, very precise strategic calculations to ensure that they are becoming this global oil hegemon. And a lot of guys have made good videos on this. I forget his name, Richard Menhurst. I forget what his name was, but he made a really good video on this. And it really highlights how the United States has been trying to cut off Cuba. They threatened Mexico with tariffs. If they give them any oil, they'll put tariffs on Mexico. They obviously hit Venezuela, and so that they couldn't give them any more oil, that being Cuba. And Russia, and nor actually China, got a little bit of oil from Venezuela as well. We're trying to choke the world of oil. We're trying to become a global oil power. I think that's the plan there. I think everything that's happened in the last year and a half kind of points towards that. I think that's Donald Trump's goal in this administration. He'll never say it, but it's pretty obvious with his actions. But it's just really not realistic. The Gulf exports way too much oil. They have way more. They have better oil. The whole world already depends on them, Asia and China. Now, the Strait of Hormuz is blocked off, but these countries are about to go into oil energy crisis. So, yeah, I mean, it's a good point. It's a good point. Maybe he does sense the U.S. economy is in this stage of potential failure. I don't know. I really don't know. C-Band's Lifestyle says, you know IRGC is 131 of Iran's military? What are you saying? Iran is set up into 2 different factions? I know that. Like there's a military side and there's a democratic side. I'm not sure what you mean. Thanks for the super chat though. But yeah, it is it's crazy. It's crazy. Let's see if we have a few more clips with Bibi before we move on to the next topic that I wanted to go over. Something that I think is like not spoken about at all. And that's the fact that the United States is like really entering this stage of like mass surveillance. And these flock cameras, what they're called, Flock is like this big tech company. There's cameras everywhere with these ALPs, automated license plate readers, ALPRs actually. And they're responsible for tracking everything that we do on the highways in our local areas. I'll show you guys this in a second, but I had one more clip that I wanted to react to.
Mr. is keenly aware of declining.
Let's see.
How do you envision?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think we've kind of gotten all the clips. And, you know, I mean, at the same time, this is just a few days ago. This is allegedly in Israel. I had this bookmark. I meant to show this as well. People in Netanyahu don't like Israel. Thousands of protesters in Israel are filling the streets in protest of Benjamin Netanyahu. They are demanding the immediate resignation of Netanyahu and a new investigation into the October 7th attacks. That is a big display. Really big public display there. Crazy stuff. And look, his power is at threat. He's being investigated by the Israeli government for corruption. But as long as he stays at war, he has some sort of plausible ability to say, hey, you can't remove me from power. The country is in a state of crisis or emergency. And again, that's another reason why I think the October 7th invasion was very opportunistic for Benjamin Netanyahu. It kept him in power, really. And a lot of people, that's an element or an angle that a lot of people don't realize or ever actually talk about. So, crazy stuff. But check this out. This article is from a minute ago. But, you know, I don't know if any of you guys are aware. So, Flock is this really large tech company. and it's owned by a couple guys. It was founded in 2017. And here, I'll just show you the website. Flock Safety is what it's called. Shaping the future of safety together. And so these are camera systems set up throughout the entire United States, and they've been ramping up very quickly, and they've made a deflock website. And essentially what these are, again, like I said, are camera systems regulated by AI or utilized with AI. They have something called an ALPR, automated license plate reader system, where any car that passes by, they read the license plate, they know where you're going. They have these set up in parks. They can see what you're doing. I think now they're actually introducing audio to them so they can even hear what people are saying. And it's meant to create or add to this massive database of the American people, collect information on us to make things easier for the federal government in terms of persecuting crime and gaining transparency, or going back in history and trying to solve missing pieces to alleged crimes, at least for future reference, and all these excuses they use. And like, this is the same thing as like the whole situation with Palantir. We are now creating these like very large, and by the way, the Trump administration has been responsible for administering and bolstering these big tech companies to do these kinds of things. We are now supporting this very large scale surveillance state system ministered by people like Flock and the CEOs of Flock and Palantir, in order to increase surveillance and remove privacy from the American people. And they've now made websites where we can see where every single Flock camera is. And this will load up. Look at this. This is crazy. And I mean, you could just go look at your own local area and see if you got a Flock camera around you. So let's say you live in Miami. I mean, there's not really no shortage of them here in Miami, and you can click, you can see the camera. I think it shows you the direction in which it records, or like the recording radius to see if you're within it. And I mean, these things are everywhere. And of course, they're more focused in the metropolitan areas for obvious reasons, the major cities, New York, Chicago, Miami, Houston, Dallas, whatever, Southern California, San Francisco, LA. And so, I have a thing here. Let me see if I can pull it up. So this is the kind of like Flock 101 safety guide, I guess. And I'm not trying to go schizo on you guys, but I think this is very important to know. So it says here, Flock is a mass surveillance technology company based out of Atlanta, Georgia in 2017, funded by Garrett Langley, Matt Fury, and Paige Todd. Flock Safety manufactures and operates automatic license plate recognition, cameras, gunfire locators, video security systems, drones, and integrated surveillance software. Not only does Flock Safety operate under contract with enforcement agencies, but also businesses and neighborhood HOAs. According to flocksafety.com, Flock Safety ALPR cameras read over 20 billion license plates per month. Okay? They also claim to operate in 49 U.S. states, including over 5,000 communities and over 4,800 law enforcement agencies. Flock Safety has partnered with Palantir, which provides intelligence for the CIA, DOD, and DHS and Ring to expand the state's massive surveillance apparatus. Now, I don't know how true that is with Palantir part. I didn't see anything like that officially stated that they work with Palantir, but I mean, how unlikely is that? It's pretty likely. And so it shows you here how they work, whatever. Again, I'm not trying to go schizo on you guys, but it is very interesting to see. This is something that I want to talk about. This is their Wikipedia, Flock Safety, and it says the same thing, doing business with Flock Safety as an American manufacturer and operator of security hardware and software, particularly automated license plate recognition, ALPR, video surveillance, and gunfire locator systems. And it shows you the owners somewhere down here. Again, Garrett Langley, Paige Todd, and Matt Fury. And no, we don't have to, do the whole early life thing. I don't think they are. However, I don't know too much about this yet. So this is something that just came across my radar yesterday. But in my local area, and obviously I'm not going to zoom in on the map and dox where I live, but in my local area, there's like 10 of these. And I was shocked because where these cameras are stationed or located are areas that I frequently drive by. And so it introduces some questions. These people have our phones, obviously, right? But really, and more importantly, now they have these automated camera systems set up. They have these license plate readers. They know where you are every day. They know the pattern in which you travel, the direction in which you travel. So if you're always going to work, or you're always going to see an accomplice or an associate at a certain time of day every single day, or at this reoccurring period every other week, whatever it is, they can build a pattern on that. They can figure that out. They will understand that. And that is certainly an invasion of privacy and an invasion of our amendments. And really, I mean, just think about it. All of this information is collected from these camera systems used by the federal government and the DOD and whatever, but really think about it on a molecular level. It's hard to discern as to what's happening or what people are doing when you collect all of this in the masses. There's hundreds of millions of Americans. So they use AI, and this is where artificial intelligence is so dangerous, which is why its introduction is great, but it's also detrimental to our future, because the AI does all the dirty work and can figure out the long-winded investigation and calculations within seconds. It can say, Riyadh always makes this left protected turn at 9 a.m. every other Monday. And then we also read his license plate 32 miles southwest of the city that he was previously in, making a right onto this street, in which he comes back at, 9:32 the next day. You know what I mean? And imagine AI can build an algorithm and understand how you travel, what you're doing. It can see people walking. It's also stationed in parks. I mean, there was just a video I saw on TikTok of a flock camera in a park recording a swing set. And so, I get it. Mass surveillance has its benefits where it can stop crime or help crime. But ultimately, the whole new high-tech camera thing it really can be used for a cynical purpose. And I mean, who actually trusts the government entirely? I don't think anybody. And this was an article that was written in 2026. Oh, 2026. Okay, I thought it was 2025, February 12th. And it says, AI-powered surveillance is turning the United States into a digital police state. Now is the time to stop it. Under the Trump administration, the U.S. has increasingly become a digital police state. One pervasive surveillance systems endanger all American fundamental rights, while immigrants, protesters, and administration political foes, pro-Palestinian activists, transgender individuals, and people seeking reproductive health care face particularly intense monitoring and repression, wholly inconsistent with our nation's founding principles. So just bear in mind, this is like some super left-wing article talking about trans rights and whatever. But really, the point is, under the Trump administration, and they're right here, and it says Donald Trump isn't the king, but under the Trump administration, they have ramped up on this federal mass surveillance project, and these cameras are rampant throughout the country. I mean, this is crazy. About 100,000 nationwide, it seems. So, I don't know. Take a look at your area. Let me know if you see one. Niggas in Montana chilling. But I mean, obviously the cameras are just focused in where the metropolitan areas are, where the cities are, Even in somewhere as rogue or as Billings, Montana, you still got a bunch of these things hanging around. So, or at least a few. And certainly this will ramp up over the years. So very concerning and off-putting. Let me read some chats very quickly. Young Dolph says, whatever you do, don't point a green laser at it, as it would be disabled. Very smart. And guys, shout out to One Chest, our moderator here in the chat. Let me pin his message. He just linked my Clips channel. I think that's ran by a fan, so shout out to you. But if you need some sort of coaching or anything like that, hit him up, help you lose weight, get in shape. Being fat in 2026, especially when it's so easy to just eat less, unacceptable. Okay, Redditruetide. Come on, we got to get on the ascension here. So hit up One Chest. One Chest, drop your link in the chat. I'll go ahead and pin it for you. If there exists a surveillance state like China has the powers that can completely harass political opponents in subtle ways and get away with it. Yeah, I get what you're saying, PFF. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's terrifying, and it's completely against our Constitution and our first 5 Amendment rights. So they recently passed a bill that forces all new vehicles starting in 2027 must all have AI surveillance that determines if you can drive or not. Yeah, and these laws are changing. I just pinned One Chest's link. So if you need some coaching, guys, have my grace. No doubt at all. This guy will help you ascend. I've seen several of his transformations. I'm into fitness myself. This guy will help you out. He's the real deal. So go over and check him out. But anyways, yeah, it is concerning, you know, and we're moving in. And I bring this up because I'm always talking about Iran on this channel and everything like that. But this is just brushed under the rug. And we've got the Epstein files, and we've got Iran, and we've got Israel, and we've got the Gaza situation. And this all matters, but like, what's happening at home? And then you look at what's happening at home, 100,000 cameras are being planted to watch Americans in their everyday moves. And you behind the camera, there is probably some database set up for you in your everyday actions somewhere in some office or some database somewhere in the United States. And that's concerning, you know, because as much as people can argue this is for security and safety, we live in a free country, and this can easily be used for a malicious purpose. And the reason why I bring up the whole free country thing is because what is the elements of a free country? Or what's the sentiment behind the fact of American democracy and freedom? It's that we don't have things like these other communist issues or these communist countries where they watch people in their every move. My buddy just went to China, and he said that he's Muslim. He wanted to pray inside of a restaurant. I think it was like a Muslim-owned restaurant or whatever. They wanted to pray real quick. It was like late afternoon prayer. They couldn't because the cameras in the restaurant were planted by the government, and I guess public display of religion or religious practice in China is prohibited. And so like he couldn't even pray. And not a big deal, whatever, nigga, just go home and pray. Well, I'm saying this to say that the United States could easily implement new laws, new legislation over time like it historically has, and we will see the flock camera systems being used to enforce those laws. You know, what does that look like when we have children? And it's gotten to the point now where if you go outside and you want to say something, you don't know if there's a camera around you, where if you say something that's self-incriminating, if you say something that's anti-Semitic, if you do an anti-Semitic gesture, you can imagine what I'm talking about, one that you see my brother do all the time, in the wrong place, maybe you lose your job. I mean, these things are really concerning. And this is just the first step. And these cameras have ramped up significantly just recently this year and ever since Trump took office in 2024. And JD Vance is the guy for this kind of stuff, you know. He's got a very close relationship with all of these tech billionaires, and so they're going to be able to push their agenda very well while he's the president of the United States. You know, I don't mean to be conspiratorial, but that's just the facts. So it's pretty scary stuff. Pretty scary stuff. I mean, look at this stuff. These are the things that these cameras will be able to do, or already able to do. Big Brother is watching you. So, something I wanted to mention and remind you all of as we close out this stream. We got some problems back here at home, and I think I'll continue to be more vocal about them, but these are always dangerous topics, so I've got to kind of straddle the line and be very careful about what I'm saying. But yeah, that is kind of the long and short of the news. So, situation in Iran is pretty much in limbo. We have stalemated, and that's kind of been the case for the last 2 weeks. However, hopefully, in the coming days, we can reach some sort of agreement for the 30-day ceasefire, and then in those 30 days, the United States and Iran come up with an elaborate plan that can cause for great peace for the remaining or the foreseeable future. But I don't know what Big Yahoo's got planned, because he says he doesn't need any more financial support. So we'll see what happens. We'll see the world react to that tomorrow. But yeah, let me see if I have any remaining chats before I hop off here. And guys, by the way, Myron is just, he's cooked. I saw a couple people ask, sorry, I was just in like the middle of everything. Myron's absolutely cooked. He's very tired. So he's been up for like several days straight, something he always does. So he's sleeping tonight. That's why I'm filling in the gap. But don't worry, he'll be back tomorrow. And maybe he'll even do an earlier stream, maybe not as late. I don't know. I'm not speaking for him, but he'll be back tomorrow. He's very tired. So let's see. Jonathan Martyr, I read that. Thank you so much. Dominicano, all you got to do is eat less and you'll save money. Bro, losing weight is like the easiest thing in the world. And you want to know something? I can say that because I've ascended. I'll give you guys a little stream exclusive here. This is my before and after. For all you large people, I won't even be derogatory. I won't even call you fat. I'm going to be so nice. for all of you larger individuals who can't lose weight, this is me. I got to crop this because it's like my you-know-what is all in the thing. This is my transformation of like 8 months. This is me at... Come on. Come on, we do fitness over here. Stop playing. So the picture on, I suppose, because the camera is reversed here, so this is kind of confuzzling my brain. So the picture on your right would be me, or your left would be me at like 240. I was like 248. And then the picture on the right is me like 2 weeks ago. And now I'm like 195, 194, kind of hovering around there. So I'm telling you guys, One Chest can do that for you. I've seen him do it. He knows what he's doing. All right. And by the way, I wasn't fat by accident. I purposely bulked up like this. All right. And that's the thing. You niggas be getting that fat by accident. Crazy work. No, I bulked up. I took the bulk too far. I was really happy with how strong I was getting. And I've always been like a really skinny kid. So I became very blind to like becoming fat because to me, it was just inconceivable. I was always so skinny my whole life. So when I started to get a little bit of size, I was like, oh, this is great. But the size was going to the wrong areas and I wasn't really noticing it. I just kept going on the bulk, kept going. And then one day I looked in the mirror and I went, oh, I am tripping. So I did an aggressive cut, but I really slowed it down. I cut really slow over the course of like 8 months. Lately, I've been a little bit more aggressive because the summer's coming around. I'm like, I might as well try and get like shredded instead of just relatively lean. So we'll get there. But yeah, shout out to One Chest. One Chest can do that for you. So link is pinned. Nav9036 says, what do you think of Chud the Builder? I see his clips on X. I mean, look, I'll say this. I don't think he's evil. I don't think he's like somebody who hates any group of people, to be honest with you. But I don't know if I like the provocative style, but it's just not my style. I don't know if I like, because he's it's provocation. You go up to a group of people and you're like, hey guys, rips the N-word. So, it's really edgy. It's really edgy, but I have no problem with him. But, they're asking how tall I am. Yeah, I'm like 6'1", 6'2", 6'3" in shoes. 6'6", 6'7". Now I'm like 6'2" in shoes. I say in shoes because I always got shoes on. No, I'm just coping. I wish I was like 6'2" without shoes. My brother's like 6'4". Bro's tall as hell. But yeah, yo, ascending is easy. I show that photo not to be like, ooh, look at me. Maybe just a little bit. I show that photo because, bro, losing weight is the easiest thing ever. All you have to do is eat less. The first 30 pounds of my cut, I did no cardio. All I did was eat less. All the way up until 210 pounds, I was just bringing my food back. Less food, better diet choices, more volume, less calories, big salads, fill my stomach so I don't get cravings. I get a craving. I have a Coke Zero, 0-calorie drink. For all you niggas at home, the best thing you can do if you're out of shape, get in shape. Not because you can parade your body at the beach I don't even do that. Who cares about that? When you build the habit of changing your body, getting in the gym, achieving that goal, whether you like it or not, a lot of people don't like going to the gym. Despite that, they still go. I will say it teaches you something about discipline that you can apply to other areas in your life. If it wasn't for fitness, I don't know what kind of person I'd be. That grounds me. And that's been the basis or foundation of me getting anything else done. Fitness has been like the home front and center for that. So if you're not in shape, try and get in shape. It ain't hard. If any of you ever have like diet advice or you need diet advice or tips and stuff like that, I can give you that. I think I'm relatively qualified to do that. I'm into fitness and stuff, so. But anyways, guys, I'm going to close out here. I got work in the morning, so I've got to get to bed decently early. I don't want to stay up too long. That's why I try to go live a little bit early for you guys. But check me out on X. This is my X here, Riyadh's Report. I'm always tweeting. I said this the other day. I said losing weight is the easiest thing in the world to do. Getting shredded, very different. Then again, with Reddit, that's easy now. So, don't be a dummy. Okay? Take the advice. Ascend if you can. Because it's not even about getting bitches and looking better. And that's all cool. But really, it translates into other areas in your life. And it's something that's difficult to understand or really explain until you've done it. Then you know what I'm talking about. For all the guys who have had crazy body transformations, they know what I'm saying. But all right, we will close out on that note. Check out my Instagram Clips channel. One Chest is popping in the chat. Shout out to all our moderators. One Chest Dominicano, Desert Joe. I don't know if he's in here tonight, but Desert Joe as well. And then Tia Kiki. Love all of you guys. Love all of our supporters. Appreciate all the love. I didn't miss any chats, right? All right. We're all caught up here. Love you guys. I'll be back Wednesday unless something big happens. And don't worry, we're going to react to President Trump in China. We're going to be all over that. And it'll be a good stream. I think that'll be the next big thing that will be fun to cover. But we'll see what happens with the situation in the Middle East and everything else like that. And I am going to be making, I should make these announcements in the beginning of the show. I'm going to be making a Discord so that you guys can send me clips to react to. Sneeko does that, and I'm stealing that idea because it's brilliant. So shout out to Sneeko. I think that's a good idea for you guys to get involved in the show without even having to, like, you know, spend money and become a supporter, which if you do that, I really appreciate it. But that's not even what I'm asking people to do. As long as you're here viewing the show, that does more than enough of a service to me. And I appreciate the support from the bottom of my heart. It means a lot. So I want to find another way to get you guys involved in the show and really immerse yourselves. And I think that's a good way for me to react to some of the things that you guys send. So we'll set something up like that. But other than that, I'll be back on Wednesday, most likely, unless something breaking comes up. But until Wednesday, guys, you have a great rest of your night. Have a good start to the week. Make sure you get to bed early so you can get up and seize the day tomorrow. Love all of you, and have a great, great night.